Well, welcome back to Inside Personal Growth. This is Greg Voisin, the host of Inside Personal Growth. And I have Kamin Samuel joining us from San Clemente, California. And for my listeners, we both got master's degree in spiritual psychology at the same time at University of Santa Monica. Kamin, good morning to you.
Good morning, Greg. It's so wonderful to be here. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Well, it's a pleasure having you on. And we were just saying, here we are, and we were in a cohort group, and she only lives like not that far from me, but we've got to go have lunch after this. So we're going to do it.
Absolutely.
But it's a pleasure having you on. And I know you've authored quite a few books, but the book we're going to be speaking about today, and I want to let my listeners know, is Wealth Creation for Coaches, that she co-wrote with Steve Chandler. And for those of you who don't know Steve, you can look him up. He has authored many books as well, and is really an expert on this topic. And we'll be mentioning that during the podcast. One of the other things I want to mention is, because Gay Hendricks has been on before, is another book called The Conscious Luck Workbook. Both of these books are workbooks, really. And, and I got to tell people, you got to do the work to get there. That's the key. And if there's anybody who knows it, it's Kamin. And so, Kamin, let me tell the listeners a bit about you before we get into the actual podcast about your book. She's a rapid transformational business and wealth mindset coach who is passionate about assisting her clients in identifying and clearing their inner blocks to achieve greater success in all areas of their lives. She holds a PhD in positive neuropsychology and master's in science in information system, a master of arts in spiritual psychology, and a master of science in spiritual science. She's the author of multiple best-selling books, including the Conscious Luck Workbook that we just mentioned a second ago, co-written with New York Times bestselling author Gay Hendricks and Carol Klein, his wife.
And his wife, his
she's not his wife. Okay. Well, all this time I didn't know. I thought she was.
Katie is his wife.
Okay. Her newest book, which we just talked about, is this Wealth Creation for Coaches, co-written with Steve Chandler. This is an extraordinary workbook with tools. Really, that's what we're going to get in, actionable tools to take steps to change your life and to change the lives of other people as well. Well, Kamin, there's always an inspiration behind doing a book, and it's not like, oh, I just have to punch out another book. Fortunately, because of our background, hopefully there was some intuition that came into the process saying, hey, I've got to try and figure out how to write to people who want to be coaches. Tell us a bit about your background and history as an ex-Navy helicopter pilot and coach, because I think that's important. Also, with both you and Steve, you both struggled early on in your career financially. You even right after, being a Navy helicopter pilot. So I think that kind of sets the framework for, hey, look, you're not an overnight success, but at the same time, you have an opportunity to take little stair steps. And you actually mentioned that in one of your chapters is about stair stepping. So tell us a little bit about you and why you wrote this book and what you think you can do for my listeners out there who want to be a coach.
Well, Greg, thank you. Thank you again for having me. And I am very proud of this book. I'm proud of all of my books, but this one in particular, because it really shows the arc. And I'm really working with, people on the arc of their career. And, starting off as a Navy helicopter pilot, I struggled to become that, I did well and was a flight instructor. And I loved helping people learn. So most of my come from a long line of educators. And so this idea of helping coaches or business owners or pilots or whatever learn has always been a part of kind of my DNA. And so that's why I love workbooks, because as you said, it takes work and I want people to be in the middle of it. And so when I went through the military, I didn't want to be a Navy helicopter pilot. I really just wanted to go into business. And through a course of action, I went in that direction. And then when I got out, I went into business for myself, and I failed miserably. Ended up in bankruptcy and foreclosure of 2 homes, and had to rebuild myself. I went into something that I love, which is technology, and grew my corporate career there. And all along, people would come to me and ask me for help. And I wasn't, I was just good at helping people. And I knew at one point in one of our projects at school, we were watching our energy a lot in the second year. And I knew that I was going to have a great day when someone came to me and said, "Hey, can we go in the conference room?" And we closed the door and they'd start crying. And I'm like, yes, there's somebody I can help today. So this idea of really coaching has been with me a long time. And this book was actually born, Greg, out of me working with Steve I've been working with him for over 9 years now.
Wow. Well, falling is not failing, as long as you get back up.
Yes.
And I've had my own setbacks, and I think about some of them as well. I had to declare bankruptcy. I had several failed companies. I put millions of dollars into things that I wish I had those millions of dollars from. But that's the journey. It's like when you get in a helicopter and you go up in the air, and I heard this reference just the other day, you don't ever know if it's going to be a smooth flight or not. There can be bumps along the way, right? There can be lots of bumps. There can be turbulence. And life is like that. Sometimes you fly across the country, you never hit any pockets of crazy air. Other times, you're going to hit some bumpy spots. That's crazy air. And if there's anybody that knows that, that's you. So you state this workbook is not about getting rich quickly. And I would agree with that because, I was saying to the last guy that I was just talking to, I'm going to be 69 in July. And I'm like looking at it going, wow, where did the time go? How do you address the common misconception that coaches should not focus on making money, but be more focused on becoming the best coaches that they can? And I think when you're a new coach, whether you're coaching a business or in group coaching or individual coaching, you have this thing like, oh boy, I'm going to be a coach and I'm going to make millions of dollars right away, right? And that rarely ever happens.
Rarely. And coaches really, a lot of what I hear is, I want to be a 6-figure coach. And I'm like, well, how much did you make last year? And they're like, $12,000. I'm like, okay, so let's talk about that.
I love that. I'm going to catapult you into $500,000 from $12,000.
Yeah, and this also goes, Greg, for those people who are at 250,000 who want to make 500,000 next year, or 750, or $1 million the following year, right? It's really this opportunity for us to realize that coaching is really the only profession, as Steve likes to say, that requires personal and professional development all the time. And so we have to work on ourselves. We have to be the ability for us to develop our own good habits. How do we talk to people? Our skills, what's bothering us, our own mental blocks. The ability for us to clear those and move forward in our lives will then dictate, how we help others, because we're really, many times as coaches, we're just a few steps ahead of somebody else.
So true.
Right. And so we forget.
And you're learning from your clients, right?
Yes.
And I think
all the time.
And as you continue to take in this wisdom, the wealth of information, and you turn that information into positive advice, you can actually, as you can take case studies and protect them by not using the name, right, and actually start to relate those things to other people, right?
Right. Can I add one thing here?
Yeah.
because one of the things about moving their careers forward is, especially when it comes to money, there are two aspects. One aspect is, again, are you coaching and helping people? We can't be in our head thinking about coaching to get better at coaching. You actually have to be, in the game of coaching and helping people to help them transform and get coached at the same time. And whether it's you're dealing with peers or you hire a coach, whatever, but that upgrade in that wisdom is so important to the development. And then being able to set a first value, check it out, test it with somebody on what your fees are, so that get some money for your skills and abilities. It has nothing to do with your worth. It has everything to do with your skills and what you believe.
And I kind of go by this axiom. You can't be a coach if you're not coachable, meaning does the coach have a coach, right?
Yeah.
In your case, I'm sure it was Steve.
Yeah.
And that's how you got going down this path. And on that front, because you both struggled early on, and many people do, you're not going to go from 12,000 to probably $250,000. It's probably not going to happen. Not that it couldn't, but probably not. What advice do you have for coaches about embracing their own worth and worthiness? You have a great quote in the book from Nathaniel Braden. We must become what we wish to teach.
Yeah.
And so comment on that, because I think if you're going to be a coach, and I'm just going to say this, you have to feel like you're enough.
Yeah.
Right. And so many people have problems with feeling enough.
Well, that's actually, I also am a clinical hypnotherapist. And so this ability, that's what a lot of the work that I do in that realm with my clients. I only do that hypnotherapy with my clients in kind of a program, because I need to work with them on, first, where did they come to believe that they're not enough? Right? What did they hear? What got set usually at a very young age, sometimes older, but they usually sources back to a young age. And that ability for us to heal and upgrade, am I enough? So that, as I said a moment ago, they're not paying you for what you're worth. They're paying you for your skills and abilities and the transformation that's on offer. And so coaches, that's what I meant about personal development. We have to keep upgrading who we are and what we're about, so that the worth question isn't on the table. Am I worth $100,000? Am I worth whatever? You're priceless. Is the program that you're offering worth $100, $3,000, $10,000, whatever? So this ability for us to upgrade, and the book, while it's designed for coaches, I've also had business owners really love this book, because we go through this process of Chapter 3 is about clearing the limiting beliefs. What did you hear? Did you hear that you're too old, too fat, too skinny, too young, too something, not enough? And how do we change those messages and then be able to design what it is that we'd like to create and move forward?
Yeah. And, you were talking about hypnosis, and I'm going to introduce you to Dr. Steve Beerman here in Del Mar. He is my hypnosis guy that I go to, my default guy. And, the subconscious, talk about that for a second, because, hey, look, when you're really helping somebody, it's what's going on in the subconscious mind. And that frequently is the underworld that we don't give that much thought to. Okay. But when you get hypnotized, if that's what way you want to refer this to, or you kind of put in a trance, it's interesting the power of suggestion that a hypnotist can have on you by just saying certain things as you're laying there, right? And I think that I want to go to this part about the subconscious, because that's where we've programmed all these limiting beliefs.
They are in there. And part of the reason I became a hypnotherapist was because I had worked with clients, they were getting a lot of progress, and then suddenly they stopped. And I thought I knew all of their stories. And I like to think of the way I do hypnotherapy, it's very just relax. I'm not going to, you're not going to cluck like a chicken. You're just going to relax. And the subconscious will tell us what's going on. Where did these ideas come from? And under hypnosis, I was surprised at how many stories of people I had known for years that came forward that I didn't know was running underneath. And here's the key, Greg, that we don't understand. If a belief like I am not enough, which is the core belief, as you said, to everyone, got set 3, 4, 5 years old, at 50, 60, 70, that belief still thinks you're 5 years old and is still why we act out. We have temper tantrums, we get sad, we get whatever. That feels the same to what happened to us when we were 5. And so I love working with the subconscious mind and rewiring, first identifying root cause beliefs that are in there, and then rewiring it, because you can set a new pathway.
Well, speak about the neuroplasticity, because, we may have some people that doubt what we're talking about a bit. Yeah. I probably doubt it if they're listening to this show, but right. but the reality is there is this thing you need to do with your subconscious mind. And the more you do it, the more you reprogram it, the neuroplasticity about these limiting beliefs can shift.
Yes.
And so what do you do with clients when you're doing hypnotherapy? I know this talk wasn't about hypnotherapy. It was about your coaching book, but that's probably part of it. It's probably part of it. Yeah. Yeah. So what could you explain to someone listening right now that may be saying something's holding me back, but I don't know what's holding me back?
Yeah. And the other way that looks in addition to something's holding me back and I don't know what it is I can't change it, right? I'm just this way. This is the way I'm wired. And what scientists have found, and this is why I went and got a PhD in positive neuropsychology, was to find all the woo-woo words that I knew about how to change people and change behaviors. To find the science behind it, was they've studied only up to the age 97 that our brains can rewire themselves. They can learn. And so that is something that is actually happening in our brains, that it can learn and can fire off new patterns. And so what we in as far as in the book, and I'm talking about as well, and in my practice, we're talking about what's the new belief. If I'm not enough, then what's the positive to that? Well, I am enough. Mm-hmm. And that's foundational. You can write it on a mirror and lipstick or whiteboard marker. You can put it, I have it 3x5 cards. I have it on my watch at 11 a.m. every day. It tells me I am enough. And I look at it and I take that in like nourishment to my body. And so the ability for us to rewire and set new neural pathways and they're not affirmations. They're not like, I am wealthy, because the ego is going to knock you over your head and say, no, you're not. That's not possible. You look at your debt. Mm-hmm. It's like, well, you can rewire it for just the feeling of wealth. What would it feel like to have an extra $100? What would it feel like to have a client say yes? What would it feel like to have a new contract signed? Those kinds of things. And the more we rehearse them, it takes anywhere from, we all have heard 21 days. I've heard 32 days, 66 and 365 days. So it takes time. We didn't get that belief overnight. We rehearse it. There's a lot in the book about what you rehearse, you become. And so what we want to do is choose what we rehearse and move into that.
Yeah, I remember interviewing Elizabeth Gould. She's a friend of David Meltzer's, and her book is called Feeling Forward, right? Great title, because when you think about it, it's like, I want to get this feeling. I want to immerse myself in what it would be like to be worth X dollars or have this great outcome. I know there's a term, and I can't remember it right now, about thinking about our thinking. You know, we use, what was the term we used at USM? You don't have to believe everything you think. Right. Right. And I think that's an important element here, because,
Absolutely.
you know, what happens is we have a thought, and the thought, then we have it again, and then it turns into a belief. And then it becomes a permanent part of that subconscious, which then continues to kind of play itself out. And we go, well, I can never have that. I'm not worthy of that. I can do whatever. So how do you identify that? And how do you get rid of those patterns and beliefs?
Most people at least know the first couple of beliefs that they have. Actually, they just have to listen to them. So there's some exercises in the book. And that's why I love giving people, exercises to actually write down what is it that they're hearing. There's a checklist of beliefs in the book that they can check off first, and then find out how it plays out. I'm not enough might show up as I'm not worth that kind of money. Nobody will pay me that kind of money. Well, we can flip that to a new belief that says, I'm open to somebody paying me that money. I'm open to sharing my gifts and abilities in a way that it would be a service to someone. And so the ability for us to start to shift and then write them down and then read them. I have people put them on 3x5 cards, set timers, whatever, to reset, because there are no really permanent beliefs. It's only that we hold on to them. I have a couple of other tools. I have this thing called the inactive box that I got from Esther Hicks and Abraham Hicks, which is basically, if you've got a belief that says something, just write it down, put it in the box, just deactivate it. I also tell my clients, and like a belief goes in, like just see it go into the trash. It doesn't have to pause. You don't have to give it any credibility.
Energy. Don't give it any energy.
Just go back to work.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so important. So you work in conjunction with Steve, and there's this Coach's Prosperity School. And you're a teacher there, or a coach there. Tell the listeners a bit about Steve, the Coach's Prosperity School, and your involvement as a coach through the school, so that they know that, hey, they can come to you, they can go over there. You're part of a big community of people that are part of Steve's team. But I would assume that's part of where you're getting your clients. Yes.
And I love Steve's program because he ran several programs that were live over the years. And it was called, that I took 5 times was the Advanced Client Systems, all about creating clients. And so he has put a lot of interviews with coaches, myself included, on the online prosperity school. And so for all listeners, it doesn't matter whether you choose me or someone else. It's really about finding resonance, finding someone who you can learn and grow from and expand. And there's a ton of videos on there to help both understand from different coaching styles of prosperous coaches who have learned from Steve and worked with him. But then there are also some teaching elements that Steve has that really will help somebody on a daily, weekly, monthly basis begin to grow their careers.
Well, and at wealthcreationcoaching.com. That's correct.
Wealthcreationforcoaches.com.
Yes. And we'll put a link to that in the blog, wealthcreationforcoaches.com. You have some free giveaways for the listening audience. So they can go there, put in their name and their email address, and you've got some videos, you've got some downloadable PDFs. You give away a lot, is what you said to me. And I think for the listeners, you ought to take advantage for that. So wealthcreationcoaching.com. Right?
And yes, wealthcreationforcoaches.com. That's our book site. And, I didn't tell you this, but there's another site where they can get a ton of resources from me. And that's the wealthflightschool.com. So I'll,
wealthflightschool.com.
yeah, and that's all the free stuff. The Wealth Creation for Coaches is if you buy the book, I've taken many of the worksheets that are in the book and made PDFs out of them. There are a bunch of videos on the front page that you get access to just from me and Steve. And then there's some videos. One of my favorite chapters in the book actually turned out to be a bonus chapter, which is the anatomy of an enrollment call. And many people are always asking me, well, tell me what do you do on an enrollment call? And so I wrote that out. There are videos in the bonus areas from the book, but on wealthflightschool.com, there's several PDFs of my other books, anything that you want. And they can always reach out to me directly if they want something else. I'm at complete open.
Well, you can also get her at Kamin Samuel, SAMUEL.com, and that's KAMIN. So you can reach her there. So we'll put all of these links for everybody.
Sorry.
I think it's important. It's okay.
I just want to give as much, because I really I'm really on a mission to help people, especially coaches and business owners, create a sustainable and thriving business that they feel good. This is their calling. They've chosen whatever their career is and to move into that.
Well, along that line, I want you to speak about this stair-stepping approach. I mentioned it earlier, and setting stretch goals and the implications that this can have if we don't reach those goals. I know I used to be somebody that set stretch goals, and I hardly ever made them. And I always thought to myself, why am I doing that to myself? I feel like I'm beating myself up. If you would speak about the negativity biases and that you referred to in the book by Jonathan, is it Haidt?
Yes.
Called the happiness hypothesis.
Mm-hmm.
Because, that cognitive dissonance, I'm going to call it between this is what I said and here's what the reality is. And it's a challenge. It's a challenge.
It is. And we are more, the negativity bias is that we are more negative than positive.
Exactly.
We are naturally. So if anybody is listening and they're like, they think that they're the only ones who are negative. No, we're inherently negative. It's part of our survival mechanism, right? To keep us alive, we have to be on alert back in the day. And so for me, I love to set stretch goals, but then I have to really bring it down to what's doable. And so a lot of the work I do is what's the next step? What's the next step? Because what happens in that negativity bias, if we set a goal that's too high, in between this one and this one, all the limiting beliefs, I can't do this. Nobody's going to pay me. I'm not good enough, all of that. And we literally just fall off a cliff. And so the ability for us to then look at, okay, we're here, very little negativity can get in. And so let's take an example of a client who says they say made $35,000 last year and they want to make six figures. Well, the first thing is to bring it into, okay, well, 35, what's a doable goal for next year? Initially, you can have the stretch goal, but it might be 50,000. And who would you need to be to get to 50,000? What would you be doing? What are the new actions and habits that you would be putting into place? And so this ability to stair step doesn't mean you might find that within 6 months you hit 50,000. If we slow ourselves down and take the step-by-step approach versus this leap where I have to be, Tony Robbins to believe that I can make $100,000 this year. No, let's make it easier. Oh, that's just one or two more clients in this year. Okay, that's doable. Let's go work on that. And then this plot of lines that then get you to that. I will say getting these images. The artist who designed it was
stepping stones.
The stepping stones. I love the artwork that was done for it, and there were there were iterations because some of the stones were too far apart and some of the stones were, were too sharp. And so this ability, it was very conscious and literal for me that people will be able to take a step, pause, see where they are. The other issue, if you go too big, is the upper limit. You can trigger, and this comes from Gay Hendricks' work is you could trigger an upper limit if you reach that number. And I've had clients exceed their goals and then ratchet themselves and self-sabotage because they hadn't grown inside of themselves to own that they are at that next level. And so they pull themselves back.
Well, one of the things that you have had an advantage in, and I don't think that a lot of people have that advantage. I mean, it's like training to climb Mount Everest, right? You just don't get up one day and say, I'm going to go up Everest. And the reason I say that is I just finished a book called The Precipice of Life, which I interviewed 22 people. One guy climbed Everest 17 times. And it doesn't work that way. And as a pilot, you were in a simulator, right? I think mountain climbers are in simulators. They have to go to certain areas where they can acclimate. They learn how to do that. And they keep doing step by step by step by step so that they can get to the 26,000 feet, right? But you speak with our listeners about what you refer to as the wealth exercise as a simulator and how replaying our vision of wealth can help us manifest it into reality, because it's like we need a simulator.
We do need a simulator. and I love the wealth simulator because this idea of, learning, like there were so many steps. People say, well, how did you become a pilot? Well, they had it nailed on the process to become a pilot. So it's not like you just walk out there one day. And so for us as coaches, and the wealth simulator is really something I picked up from The Power of Your Subconscious Mind by Joseph Murphy. And he has a passage in there on wealth consciousness, and it just stood out. And it was really just repeating the word wealth, not I am wealthy, as I said before, but wealth. What would it feel like? And so this ability for coaches or business owners also to get an idea, whatever that next step is, that next doable, believable step for them is in their business, is, well, just take a few minutes in the morning, and as you go to sleep, what would it feel like to have that next client? What would it feel like to see $100, $5,000, whatever the number, come in? What you're listening for when you're saying, it's like, what would that feel like? I'm always listening for, well, who would I be at that? What would I be doing? I might get an idea, reach out to this person. Action items will come in when we're feeling from that place of what we're doing that say, okay, reach out to him, reach out to her, send an email. Oh, you need to do this. Those things begin to clear a path. And then all of a sudden there's like this magic that happens where you reach out to somebody and they're like, I was just thinking of you. Let's have a call. And there's just this synchronicity and flow to what they're creating.
Yeah, I think you call it the power of attraction. You start to bring that in as you, affirmations have always been a big thing in the world, right? And creating affirmations, and I believe in them. They're important because it helps to reprogram the subconscious, no matter how you're doing it. And,
right.
And you state that it took you a long time from thinking about being a coach to becoming a working, prosperous coach. That's the same thing with a business person. I think you're talking about six-figure income, but, and I don't want to get into this so crazy at this point, but, you can gross six figures, but that doesn't mean you're netting six figures because of your expenses. And that's all about budgeting and looking at what you're spending money on and everything else. And then people go, well, I gross this much money, but what did you really
right.
Earn? Right.
What'd you keep?
What'd you keep? That's right. So speak with us about listeners about what you refer to as solving the procrastination puzzle that you referred to. And what's this doctor's name? Dr. Pychyl.
Cycle, I think it
A
is.
psycho. Okay. Psycho?
Well,
No, psycho.
cycle.
But there, I know that for a fact, pardon me, but procrastination is a big part of this. And you have to look at why are you procrastinating? And you and I know this because what is it that you don't believe you deserve in your life? Right?
I like to look at it as, if someone, I actually love when someone says they've been procrastinating. That to me is the most fun, because what I want to know is between the time you said you were going to do something and the time you didn't do it, what was the story? What did you tell yourself about your abilities? What do you know? Can you do this? Whatever. Because that's gold for a coach, right? And for us as coaches, like for me, I procrastinate. I know, I tell people I'm running a group and I had them write down, what does it look like when you are hiding from work? Like, if you're not successful, what will you have been doing? And for me, it's actually cleaning in the middle of the day. If I'm cleaning in the middle of the day, I know that I am absolutely procrastinating, and I just need to bring my awareness to it. Maybe finish maybe what I was doing quickly, put a time limit on it, and then write down, what is it that I'm worried about? What is it I'm afraid of? Is it that the steps that I have are too big and I need to break and chunk them down into, as we've learned 3-foot tosses?
Yeah.
Because many times it's just the story. It means nothing that we procrastinate. It's just the story. Let's get in it and get at it.
Yeah. Well, put down the Mr. Clean bottle and the rag
back away
and go back to work.
Yeah.
I actually think sometimes there's and I'll say this about bike riding, hiking, taking a walk on the beach. There's a level of solitude. In your case, it might just be the cleaning. You are trying to get away from, I think, the complexity.
Yeah.
There's so much complexity involved in owning a business today. And I don't want to make that a statement to scare people. I want to make it a statement to tell people that you can master the complexity. But we have to deal with it. And
break it down to something that's doable for them.
Yeah, exactly. Because some people time block, some people don't. Yep. Some people set their calendars up, some people don't. You really have to find where you resonate really well with this. And there are people that are making very good money at doing coaching and running businesses. I got clients. They don't time block. They just, they're ADD, they're ADHD, they're all over the place. Yet they have people skills. They've got great people skills. So they find other people to do that, right? So, you kind of have to look at it. But you speak about a very important element you call client creation time. You mentioned it about 5 minutes ago. Can you tell the listeners what it is and how to go about creating clients? Because look, that's the acquisition phase of this business. And I love that chapter because you gave lots of tips and lots of things that people could do. If there was one chapter you wanted to rip out of the book, it was probably the client creation one, right?
Right. And that actually we did make into a checklist, and I have people like print it out and put it on their screen so that they come in, because with that, it's more prescriptive, Greg, than I wanted to be. But it was a literal answer to a client in one of my groups. It was like, I don't know what to do now. And I'm like, oh, well, here, I don't want you to think about it. Just go to this list and choose something today that would be of service to somebody. And
pardon me for interrupting, Bill, when I saw that chapter, I remembered an interview with Pamela Slim. Do you know who she is?
No, I don't.
Okay. So anyway, you should. And she was telling a story in the book about oh, these people that are running their businesses and how they procrastinated. And she, just like you, gave a checklist to this woman whose business had gone down the other side, and she was so depressed. And she said, what did you stop doing that you were doing? Because that's what happens. I'm going to go clean. I'm getting Mr. Clean out. Right. I'm going to go do this because I'm avoiding doing that other stuff because I think there's too much rejection. But whatever it is, she went and she did it. And she literally escalated the business 3 times greater than what it was from the checklist. So you give a checklist in that thing. And I'm telling listeners right now, go buy this book and just go to that section about the creation. You will have quadrupled your money and just from that one chapter.
Right. So, because many people come in and they're like, I don't know what to do. I've talked to everybody. And I'm like, have you really talked to everybody? And so there's a list of like, you can email, you could do client astonishment, meaning like I've called a client in the middle of the day and they're like, what's wrong? Like, what did I do? And I'm like, no, you came to mind. I just wanted to see how you're doing. You're working on this project. And they were like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And so
client astonishment. I love it.
You can send a book, you can email, you can create a video, but we want to make sure that we're using it, not just again, procrastinating by working on our website. I have people like, no, you work on your website at TV time at night or after working hours, but be in motion, share your life, share what you're doing. If you're going to write something, write it and send it to one person, then post it on your website or post it in social media. But the core is really to come back and get centered and ask themselves, who could I serve? And just listen and take action and then do it again, over and over again. And there's a whole host of things that they can choose from.
Yeah, it's a wonderful world out there. We have so many tools, Somebody they told me about Chat GPT, which I know almost everybody. It's the AI
I've seen
thing.
it, but I have not. I don't know what it is.
Oh my gosh, I got involved in it, and it's writing all my emails for me and doing everything. It's crazy. But the point is that your book is filled with really great advice for like bidding coaches, as well seasoned coaches, as well as business entrepreneurs. This book really kind of fits that whole spectrum. If you were to give our listeners today 3 bits of actionable advice that they could leave with today from this podcast and literally institute within the hour, right? I'm going to go do what Kamin said, and you think it would make a change or a shift and help them transform one element of their life, what would that be?
So I think such a great question. It's like, okay, what would the first one would be? First, let's look at your beliefs. Look at what you want to create and what is the belief that has been holding you back from actually taking action. Okay. And then rewrite it right away. Put it on. I have 3x5 cards all the time. 3x5 cards, that it's just the way I work, is to write it and put it in front of you, that new belief. Oh, I am enough. That's another thing. Write it on your mirror. I am enough. Put it everywhere. Because the more we can see that and own that, the more we can be move forward in our life. Then it's number 2 would be then, what's that first step? Where are you? And what's that next doable, maybe a teeny bit of stretch, but not this big? What's that next step? And what are some action items, and go do those. And then the last one really is just that third one is move into action. Move into action. Be of service to somebody today. There are so many, we know that there are so many people who are suffering right now. And the coaches and business owners who are really coming from their gifts and their calling to do their thing in the world, go do that. Be of service, share yourself, help somebody today, whether you get paid or not. Use a testimonial, but allow it to nourish you. We get nourished when we're giving and serving. So the ability for that exchange and allow them to pay you if that's, I come from the Prosperous coach world, from the Steve Chandler and Rich Litvin. The ability for us to give and receive is so much a part of this coaching practice.
Yeah, I echo everything you said, and I'll add one additional thing. To create action in your life, you have to have a high level of awareness of what it is that you're doing or not doing. Mm-hmm. So whether it's mindfulness practices or meditation or whatever you're going to be doing, from a spiritual standpoint, it's very important to get into that connection and listen to that higher spirit, that higher power. And we've been on with Kamin Samuel. This is one of the books, Wealth Creation for Coaches. We'll have links to all of the websites. The other one that she co-wrote with Gay Hendricks and Carol Klein is this one, the Conscious Luck Workbook. This one is equally as good, by the way, folks. So, go out and get a copy. Actually, get a copy of both of these, right? I'll put them both up. There you
Absolutely.
go. And but Kamin, thank you so much. Namaste to you. Thank you for being on Inside Personal Growth and spending some time with the listeners, providing them with some wisdom and some coaching on how to become a good coach, and also how to become a good business person, just generally overall, in running your business. So thank you.
Thank you.